and welcome to the Doofcast, the official variety podcast of doofmedia.com. My name is Scott Daly, and I am the Guardian.
And I am Matt Freeman, and I am the Guild.
Matt, the Guild is a bunch of people. You can't just be the Guild all by yourself.
What kind of person would be so arrogant as to presume the intention of another human being?
Critics!
Like us.
This week on our show, we are continuing our Deconstructing Director series with the fifth entry in our discussion of the films of M. Night Shyamalan. We're talking about 2006's Lady in the Water, and I know you are very excited about this conversation, Matt. This is one I think you've been waiting for.
I am. I couldn't wait.
And after that, we're going to talk a little bit about the new Spider-Man film, because we've both seen that, and it's rare that we both see movies in theaters. So when it happens, we just have to talk about it.
It's true.
So that's going to be with this week's episode. It's going to be a good one. We're back from vacation. Hope everyone missed us on our week off.
Yeah, and we're doing the Deconstructing Shyamalan, which is a series that I have been greatly enjoying, and we're almost to the point where we're going to start trying to figure out what happened.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great way to get right into Lady in the Water.
I'm Cleveland Heap. Welcome to the Cove. I hear splashing some nights. Hello? Hey! I saw you! I saw you! Who in the world are you?
So before we get into this movie proper, Matt, I kind of want to paint the scene here a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Because this is the fifth film that he's done since The Sixth Sense. And this is really, like we talked about it last time about The Village and how The Village was one of his first movies that wasn't critically acclaimed, but it still made a lot of money. Mm-hmm. This is his first box office failure. This movie, I think, barely got up to its production budget, if even. It was an expensive movie because he built this entire set in a warehouse, like the whole thing. He just built it all, the whole thing.
Wow.
He built it. And I think this is a really interesting time in M. Night's career, because I think you could call these next three movies the two jabs in the cross of his career, right? Because we've got Lady in the Water, then we've got The Happening, and then we follow it up with the TKO, which is
Avatar,
The Last Airbender.
Yeah, The Last Airbender.
So yeah, I mean, this is the point of his career. We're moving in it with this movie. We're really starting what is generally referred to as the nosedive of his career.
Yeah.
And it's exciting because this is a movie that I quite enjoyed,
right?
And it's supposed to be one of his bad movies, right?
Yeah.
And so it had been a long time since I seen this movie, and I watched it today, and I was kind of blown away by how much I just liked it. I don't think it's a perfect movie. I probably would rank it below the other ones that we've covered so far, but there's a lot to like here, and I'm really looking forward to kind of diving into that with you.
Yeah, I agree completely. I've always known that I was the weird one who still really likes this movie, even though it's not popular. And I watched it again and still love it, honestly. In fact, if I was going to rank things, I would probably place this one tied with The Village. And I mean, I think I just like this movie more than Unbreakable. I don't know if I would go to the point of saying it's better put together. In fact, I don't think it is, but I just enjoy this movie more than Unbreakable. So I enjoy this movie a lot. I love this movie. I think it's very cleverly put together. Watching it this time, I was paying a lot more attention and thinking a lot more analytically, and put a lot more things together that I'd never put together before, and thus I like it even more now. So what's funny is we just framed this conversation in context of, okay, this is the first failure movie, but in reality, I don't think this movie is a failure. I think this movie is just very weird, and
it's very weird
and very ambitious. And
And it is not like I was thinking about this movie and I'm like, you're I think 45 minutes into the movie before the plot really starts going.
yeah.
And I think it's just like a slow burn kind of movie. This is not a movie that I think was made to appeal to most people, which is a weird thing to say, but I think that's a truism that we're going to see throughout a lot of the rest of Shyamalan's movie. He's built up this certain thing and he's maybe has more control over his stuff than he ever did. This movie was the first movie he made not with Disney. The other 4 movies he made were released by Disney, and he left them. It's like a big controversy. He got pissed off at them because he didn't feel like they were appreciating this movie enough, because he is really proud of this movie. He really liked the script. He says this is his most personal movie. It was based on a bedtime story that he told his children. He kind of expand upon that bedtime story. And I think he still calls this one of his favorite of his own movies. So he wanted other people to appreciate it. And there is kind of an arrogance might be too strong of a word, but there's kind of a confidence that he knows, or if he feels he has something very important here that he's trying to say with this movie.
Yeah. And that's, I think it works for me, and I can actually understand it not working for some people.
Yeah.
Because he's trying to do something, what I would call daring. Mm-hmm. Like, it's a structurally weird movie. The story is strange and fantastical in a way that people don't seem to get on the whole. It's kind of like The Village, where people got so hung up on like the plausibility of it. And it's just like, man, I just do not care about the plausibility. Like that is not, the Village is basically a fairy tale, just not explicitly. It doesn't explicitly have magic, but like tonally it's a fairy tale. This is explicitly a fairy tale. Yeah. And you still can't get your head around the like, come on, guy. Like, just let's try to give the movie the benefit of the doubt, right?
Yeah.
Even giving it the benefit of the doubt, it's a strange movie though.
Yeah. So what's this movie about, Matt?
This movie, apartment building superintendent Cleveland Heap rescues what he thinks is a young woman from the pool he maintains. When he discovers that she is actually a character from a bedtime story who is trying to make the journey back to her home, he works with his tenants to protect his new friend from the creatures that are determined to keep her in our world. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. So what is this movie actually about, man?
This movie is about, I agree that it's about Cleveland Heap. It's about Paul Giamatti's character. And of course, we have to say that Paul Giamatti kind of makes the movie. His performance is so layered and nuanced, and manages to move between like literally making you cry and being extremely comedic. And the whole conceit of the movie is that he's continually taking this bizarre happening very seriously, and then pretending to be just like a befuddled and eccentric man asking people questions about fairy tales and stuff. And it's such a funny, it's just a great, hilarious performance that's also very moving. Yeah,
I Paul Giamatti is one of my favorite actors. Mm-hmm. I love him. I think you're absolutely right. He mixes this wonderful bit of comedy and pathos where you really feel he plays a very good, like, downtrodden, miserable guy that also has like a biting sense of humor. I don't know if you've ever seen that wine movie Sideways. It's not the best movie, but he's fantastic in it. He's so good, and I think it's a very similar type of character here. I completely agree that he makes the movie. I don't know. It's hard for me to predict what this movie would look like without him,
right?
Because he's so central to it.
Yeah, and his take on the character is really like this quiet sadness, but there's also like a hidden strength within the sadness. And I mean, it's just a very interesting and complex character. It's a very well written character, and I think that actor aside, it's actually a very very well written character. And from a story point of view, the thematic plot movement of what's being done with this character is awesome. But then Paul Giamatti just happens to be a great actor who dramatizes it perfectly too.
Yeah. What I like about it so much is that the way the story is constructed is it's almost like it seems like it's not about Cleveland Heap. Like the overall story is that there's this they're not called nymphs. What's the name again? It's
Narf.
a weird name. Narf.
Yeah,
Thank
it's like
you.
a naiad type.
Yeah, it's like this water nymph comes here. She's got a mission. Her mission is to go find this very important writer who's going to write this book that will change the world in the future, played by M. Night Shyamalan, which is why the fact that he inserted himself into this movie is not dissimilar to what he's done in his other movies, but the fact that he inserted himself into this movie as the character who's going to write the most important thing that's ever been written upset a lot of people. It's why a lot of people see it as arrogant. But hey, I love Stephen King, and Stephen King did the exact same thing, so it's too hard not to get. And plus, I don't think. I will get into it, but I don't think what M. Night is saying with this movie is I am the best writer ever. I don't think that's what he's saying.
Yes, I think on this rewatch especially, I realized that I myself and also the culture at large have misread Shyamalan's inclusion of himself as the savior of the world, and also his inclusion of the critic as just a piece of shit who deserves to be eaten by a monster. Like neither of those are really. That's not really what he was doing with either of those things. It's more subtle than that. And
yeah,
I'm not entirely confident that I've got it right now, but I am pretty confident that it's more complicated than just, haha, I hate critics because they said bad things about my last movie.
Absolutely. And look, I think there's a little of that in there. Like we have to be honest here. The Bob Balaban plays Harry Farber, the critic character, and there's Shyamalan's having a little bit of fun at the expense of critics. Like we can't deny that that's in there, right? And I think Shyamalan is also by picking himself to play this writer character is kind of showing a little bit of confidence in his writing. That is true, but that is not all that they are doing. And I think we critics got so wrapped up in those things on the surface level that we started ignoring that underneath part of it. And yeah, I really want to get into that with you because I'm very interested in your thoughts and kind of my thoughts. Because I mean, you look at Bryce Dallas Howard's character, who is the Narf named Story. Right. Her name is Story, Matt. This is a movie that is both subtle and extremely unsubtle at the same time, because her name is Story. And M. Night Shyamalan, by putting himself in the character of the writer, is almost kind of saying that the power of his writing, the power of the writer's writing, doesn't come from him. It comes from something else. It comes from this mythical thing we call story. This oftentimes misunderstood otherworldly thing that comes to us sometimes and inspires us to put important words down on the paper. He's not crediting that to himself. He's crediting that to some otherworldly thing that we barely understand.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love that so much because that is like this thing, story, the power of it. It's so amazing. And yeah. I mean, that kind of, I think Tolkien kind of had a very similar thought, right? That like his idea was that all stories were part of one story and you're really just building a branch off of the tree of story.
Right. Yeah, I think, on one level, she is a muse because she comes to him and she inspires him. On another level, metaphorically, a story can come into your life and change you and inspire you and
absolutely.
Make you a new person. And she is this person who comes into, I mean, not Shyamalan's character's life, but Paul Giamatti's character's life, right. and changes his life and saves his life in his own words. Like you mentioned, I mean, it's the fact that she's called Story. It's clearly saying stories are this powerful. Stories can change people. They can save people. And I mean, I think that we agree that that's actually a great message. And I think that the way he chose to deliver it maybe caused it to be missed.
Yeah. And look, like, I get the complaints about putting himself in this character, but I have to be like, well, but Vic Ran, the writer character, is not the main character of the story. In fact, he's pretty unimportant. to the overall plot. I mean, he's important to the plot of the fairy tale, but not the story within the fairy tale, which revolves around Paul Giamatti.
Yeah.
Like he's actually barely in the movie. Like he's in scenes, but like there's very few one-on-one scenes with him. There are a few of them, but
and his purpose is ultimately, again, not to be the savior of the world. It's basically to inspire someone who is going to make great change. And in a sense, it's this interesting idea that he's just part of a link in a chain. Story herself is a vessel that is bringing inspiration to him. He is a vessel that is going to bring inspiration to this boy who's going to be president, and he's going to die. That's the end of his story.
Yeah.
So that's, the idea that your purpose might even just be convey this inspiration to the next person in the chain, and that's a good life. You've done a good thing.
Yeah, and there's that. I mean, that word is really important, purpose, because that is what story brings to these people, and therefore that is what stories bring to people, is purpose. Paul Giamatti's character, Cleveland Heap, is this guy who has lost everything, right? He was a doctor with a wife and children, and we learn that some guy broke into his house, murdered his wife and children, and he wasn't there. And it cost him everything. He lost everything. Now he's working. I think I love at the beginning of the thing, she's saying everyone has a purpose, and he's like, anyone can do this job. Anyone. Like this is a job that can be done by anyone, custodian of this hotel. But the movie itself like betrays that lie, right? Because he does it, and everyone. I think you said to me when we were talking about this over instant message earlier today, everyone in the Cove loves him. Yeah. The Cove is the hotel complex, but it's also this like it's a fairy tale kind of place, right? It's just like there's all these different kind of goofy characters. The guy only working out one half of his body, the guy who never leaves his room, the huge collection of family, the dude who's always in the bathroom and his wife is dishing all the information about him. It's like this fairy tale collection of fairy tale creatures, and he is the caretaker. He is the one that helps them all. So no, not anyone can do this job. Only you could do this job. This is your purpose.
Yeah. Reflecting that idea that he's supposed to be a healer and a caretaker,
right.
Not necessarily a protector, because I thought it was really funny, and I mean obviously it's obvious, but he everyone like loves him, and then he'll like scold some of the residents and they will accept it like he's their dad, like I love the dynamic of him with the residents, because it's not kind of, the movie very quickly establishes this idea that all the residents know him and love him. He's not just like a background fixture of the place that nobody really pays attention to. That they all know him, and like the guys like don't hurt his feelings. They care about him.
I love that. That was so sweet. And but there, I mean, it's interesting because the guild, who turns out not to be the guild, the smoker group.
Yeah.
I think we should the opening of this movie, I think, is really fantastic. It's this kind of sweeping Shyamalan-esque movement through the hotel as he's going from resident to resident, dealing with their problems, helping them. And they use the character of the critic to kind of introduce us to a lot of our characters. It's like, the new guy is the excuse to introduce the audience to a lot of people. And there's this one moment where all those guys are smoking in their room, and they step outside to put out the cigarettes on the ashtray, which is outside the room because they're not supposed to be smoking in their rooms. And he just kind of like wordlessly picks up the ashtray to clean it. And like, there's no interaction. He doesn't like poke his head in and be like, hey, stop smoking. I mean, he says it a little bit later in a different scene, but he just kind of wordlessly picks up the ashtray. And like, on the one hand, they're not respecting his rules, right? Because they're smoking inside. On the other hand, they're still putting out the cigarettes outside, which is a little weird thing. Like it seems like they don't care, but they care enough to store the ashtray outside, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah. It's this little understanding they have, right? And he's kind of taking care of them. It's I mean, I don't know, to analogize it to myself, it's like how you want your kids to clean up after themselves, but also you'll totally just clean up after them, right? Like you're not literally going to just let the mess pile up higher and higher. Your job is to take care of them. Part of taking care of them is teaching them to clean. The point isn't break their will and force them to clean. The point is take care of them, which is what he's trying to do for these people, for all these people.
Yeah. And so we meet all these people, and then the plot kind of starts moving along when Bryce Dallas Howard shows up, when Story shows up. And I think one of the things that's remarkable about this movie is like how quickly he starts to believe the fairy tale. He like hears she I think does she say the word narf? I can't even remember anymore. He hears the word narf, happens to talk to the one lady who is like the person who feeds him books and knowledge, and of course it's a Eastern fairy tale that she's heard, and there's that whole scene where her mother is relaying the translation to her, and he just kind of buys into it. I think you said that earlier, that like he's completely bought into this thing and like trying to investigate in these like secretive ways without telling everyone what's going on, but he never seems to have really any doubt.
Yeah,
at all.
I think that, the movie does it pretty cleverly too. This is one of the ways where I don't find plausibility is strained, actually, because from the beginning he notices that he's not stuttering when he's around her.
Yeah.
Then like pretty early on, actually, he sees the creature on the lawn, and at first he thinks it's a wolf, and then he kind of eventually realizes like, nah, there's too many weird things. Too many weird things are happening. And he starts taking it seriously. And I don't know. I personally believe his arc of going from just being like, okay, there's a crazy girl in the pool, to being like, okay, I'm in a magical fairy tale story now. And I didn't find any issue with that at all.
No, I don't think so either. I mean, I think like there sometimes in movies you just gotta kind of go with it, right? And I think not. This is a very meta movie, right? So like, it wants us to go with it, but he's also kind of going with it. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
So you mentioned this is the point when Bryce Dallas Howard's character Story comes in. And what's interesting is like she obviously The Village had a lot of great actors, but she was basically the star of that movie, and she basically makes that movie work. This movie, it's interesting because she's just kind of playing a weird alien the whole time, and it's certainly not bad. It's just you don't really connect to her character in this movie.
No, and I don't think you're supposed to.
Yeah, like, I agree.
I think she's supposed to be this kind of understandable, otherworldly thing.
Yeah.
That we're just like, we are. I mean, she's very alluring, and like you're very interested in her, and like what I think Shyamalan does a really good job in how he shoots scenes with her. There's a power to her. The way people look at her, the way people are framed when they're talking to her is very specific, is very focused. It kind of shows this through the camera work, how people have a reverence for her. And I think that really builds this feeling you have just when you're looking at her, where you feel that as well. But yeah, I don't think you're ever really relating to her as a character.
Speaking of the camera work, he's doing a lot of his characteristic things here. For example, showing one person's back consistently while they're talking, letting you kind of imagine what's on their face and infer their emotional state from their voice and their body language, while the person who's actually listening is the one whose face you see. Just very, very long, steady shots where, again, you're maybe not seeing the face of the person who's talking. Long, steady shots where you're not seeing anyone's face. You're seeing two people who are maybe huddled together facing away from the camera talking. But like you just mentioned, there's a lot of just like shots where Bryce Dallas Howard's face is almost filling the frame. Like it's from chin to hairline, and looking dead on, not into the camera, but just off to the side, in a way where he doesn't really do that with anybody else in this movie, or really in any movies that I can remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, one of the other things he does is he really likes to frame his camera with stuff in the scene, and I noticed it especially a lot in this movie. There's the one like really important decisive scene where they've gathered the group for the first time, all like the Guardians there, the healers there, the guild is there, and they've gathered them around her, and they're trying to come up with a plan of what to do. And like everyone is standing outside the shower, which she's just sitting in because she's a nymph and needs to be near water. And so we have the shower curtains kind of framing the scene, and it makes it kind of like a portal-y type of feeling, right? Like you're not just looking at a frame of a movie, like it's shrunk the frame. You're looking into something. It makes you feel like you're looking into the frame a little bit more. And I think that's a very powerful effect that I remember him using in Unbreakable. I remember we talked about how he kind of used the frame to build like comic panels a little bit. Here, I think he's using it to really go into that fantasy, to really make it feel like you're entering a fairy tale.
Yeah, I mean, stuff like that. I think the most beautiful shot in the whole movie to me is the end where he gives her a hug and the shot is up through the surface of the pool.
Yeah,
and it's shimmering and distorted.
It's almost a literal portal. Yeah,
yeah, and you only ever see the eagle through the. Well, that's not true, but you see the eagle come down through the distortion, and then it cuts around to everyone's reaction, and then the last shot it cuts back to that same point of view from below the water, and of course it's raining on them, and you can't help but remember. Man, I don't know. Maybe it's a symbol for rebirth and cleansing.
No, it's not.
The best comedic line ever.
Yeah, can we talk about the critic? I know we're kind of just jumping around here, but I think that's fine. So, I mean, let's talk about this guy, because there's a few pretty decisive moments in here with this character. He comes in, the first one is he goes and sees a romantic comedy and he asks him, how was the movie? And he said, it sucked.
Yeah.
And he's like, why? Everyone's just walking around saying what they're thinking. Which is, I mean, this movie does that a lot. Like, this movie does that quite a bit. Yeah. And it's like, there's no subtlety. Everything's obvious. Like, they're just saying what they're thinking. And you read reviews of this movie and that's like exactly what they say. And a lot of critics get really snarky. I love critics sometimes when they're like, Mr. Shyamalan, just because you lampshade that in your own review doesn't mean you can use it in your movie. And it's like, no, but like that. Here's the thing about fairy tales. Like, that's what they do. Like, on a certain level, metaphor in fairy tale is not supposed to be like super deep and hidden and decipherable, right? On a certain level, it's just supposed to be, hey, stories are powerful and they help you define who you are. That's and it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah.
But
the monster is actually bad. There's not going to be a twist.
Right. I
mean, but there is actually a twist in this movie, but it's pretty benign. It's just that the group that they've assembled that they think is the Guardians or whatever it's called, I forget, is the wrong people.
Yeah.
And that's very satisfying. That's like a very satisfying Shyamalan twist where you're like, oh. Yeah, that was. I get it. That the resolution to this puzzle was all set up in the background, and it makes perfect sense when you explain it. And nobody really calls it a twist because it's just kind of a light bulb moment. But it kind of is actually.
Yeah, and that wrong information was based off of bad criticism,
right?
or bad guessing from the critic. Yeah, interpretation. I think that's the best word. Interpretation. He went to the critic and he asked for interpretation of these things. The critic gave him what he felt, what he thought it was, and he was wrong. And that's when that line we read in the intro, what kind of person would be so arrogant as to presume the intention of another human being? And that's, I mean, like, I think that's what sometimes... I think Shyamalan's pushing it there, right? Like that is him literally talking to people as like, you thought you wrote in your review that this is what my movie was doing. How do you think that you could guess what I'm trying to do here? And to be fair to critics, that's not what critics should be doing. Critics should be reading the movie and developing and delving into their interpretation and what they think works and doesn't work. I think the comment he's making here, and I think the very specific thing with that, like where Cleveland says, well, maybe the rain, them talking in the rain is a metaphor for renewal, rebirth, a second chance. And the critic is just like, no, it's not. And so it's not that critics are not allowed to have their own interpretations that might be interpretations that are negative and don't enjoy the thing. But when you start saying that no other interpretation is valid, that no, that's not what that was meant by that. It was not supposed to be a metaphor. It was just stupid bullshit, bad screenwriting and bad filmmaking. I think that's the part that Shyamalan has an issue with. But like we said, I think it delves a little deeper than that.
Yeah, I mean the thing is, I agree completely with Shyamalan here. I it totally gets on my nerves when a critic or even just a person in conversation says like, this is what this movie is this is what
Yeah.
this movie is doing, this is what was intended with this movie, and you're like, okay, that's your take, and that's
Right.
fine. I have my take, and I can even and far be it from me to like I've definitely said like, I'm pretty sure this is what the filmmaker is trying to do here, and I don't think they're succeeding at doing it or whatever. But that's still my assessment, right? And I'm not
Right.
going to tell someone else their assessment is wrong.
Yeah.
I might debate them over like, okay, well, what do you think supports that assessment, that kind of thing. But like this idea, I mean, it's perfect that the critic just says no, it isn't, because that's
Right.
totally a thing. First of all, that you basically see real critics do, and it's just a bad habit, and I
Yeah.
hate it. And
The
I'm-
arrogance is not in saying you don't like a thing.
Yeah.
The arrogance is in saying that no, that thing can not possibly mean that. No, it cannot. No.
Yeah.
It's those declarative statements like that.
Yeah. Almost the funniest part from the critic for me though was when he said I'm going to be seeing a romance film, not my cup of tea. It's like he already is planning to hate it, right? Like
Right.
it's so good.
Yeah. Yeah, and of course the critic dies a horrible death, which again was interpreted as Shyamalan like having his movie take it out on the critics. And look, I can see that. I can see how, you're being paid to watch this movie and you sit there in the theater and you see him like have a critic stand up there like being super arrogant and declaring, I know exactly what kind of movie this is. This is a horror movie, and I'm going to turn away and the door will slam at the exact moment and I will be safe. And having returned to the movie later, will have learned a lesson. And then, of course, he's just brutally murdered, and it's funny. But I mean, what I think we're doing here is like the message to me is story comes and story helps you find your purpose. It is not up to someone else to tell you what your purpose is.
Yeah.
You experience the story and find your own purpose in the story, find your own read in the story. And the problem with the critic is not that he's a critic. The problem with the critic is that he is declaring his interpretation of the purpose of the story as the interpretation of the purpose of the story.
Yeah.
And when you're wrong, you're wrong. And maybe not even wrong. I mean, just like I think in this movie specifically, you are wrong, because he's specifically saying, no, that is not the purpose. That they are not the guild. That is not the I forget what the symbol guy. I don't remember what he is. The translator, whatever.
It's a weird word. I don't remember either.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. I mean, basically he's trying to Shyamalan's always telling weird stories. He's telling very unusual stories. And within this story, which is like a nested Matryoshka doll of stories, he has a character saying, "Oh yeah, I know what this kind of story is. I've seen all stories. There are no new stories. There is no creativity left in this world," or whatever the quote was. And I totally know what's going to happen here, and what the author, what the storyteller is trying to do here. And Shyamalan is saying like, no, don't try to apply like the rote, thoughtless sort of like pattern matching critical lens to this movie, or really maybe he's saying don't apply this to movies in general. Like it's reductive. Like maybe the romance story that the guy was talking about was great, right? Like we don't know what, I mean, it would be funny if Shyamalan had a specific movie in mind for that, but like the idea of you're gonna reduce any story to just like a set of hero's journey bullet points, and there you're done. You finish storytelling.
That's why
I think he doesn't like that.
I really hate the trope, like tropifying, like we're human beings and we love to label and classify. That's just kind of like what we're almost programmed to do on a certain level.
Yeah.
But I think we do it a little too much. And I think when you are a critic, or you are someone that watches stories, you do it a lot more, because you've seen so many things that you're like, oh, I recognize this. I'll file this away as this, and I'll file this away as this. And I think what this movie is asking you to do, and one of the reasons why I do appreciate it, because I'm guilty of this as well. Like, that's one thing I want to make clear here. We're not sitting here saying, yes, we are the good critics that know all these things, and everyone else is the bad critics that don't know these things. No, I fall under these same traps as well. I go into movies expecting not to like them. I classify and catalog and think I've got the movie figured out instead of just like absorbing it. But I think this movie is kind of trying to tell you, hey, maybe just try not to do that. I know it's hard. I know it's tough. Try. Let story be your muse. Let the story wash over you, to use water metaphors, and change you. And if you let that happen, it can change your life.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, just to keep an open mind, and I think it's telling that one of the common reactions to both this movie and to The Village and to Signs actually was nitpicking for plot holes. Plot holes. Everything's plot holes. Like that was the main thing that I heard in the criticism of all three of these movies was, oh, so many, it was, very atmospheric, but the plot holes really made it unwatchable.
Yeah.
And you're like, I don't understand what you're talking about. Like you're just thinking about, like, you're trying to shove this movie into a framework that it is not doing that. And then you get mad at the movie when you can't shove it into the framework. I really think that that's the reason why these movies weren't well received.
Yeah. Well, and this movie in particular, one of the things I was going through and reading some of the reviews, because I always get really curious. And one of the things a few of the reviews harped on was the rules around the fairy tale. Like, we have narfs and I don't even remember the names. They're all funny, weird names.
Scrunt and they're all silly and childish. Yeah.
We have all these silly names for these things, and we have these rules, and the thing establishes that there are rules. Only these things are breaking the rules, and all these reviews were like, well, these are so arbitrary and nonsensical, and it's like, yeah, but that's a fairy tale. Like, you establish a world within the fairy tale story that characters can behave like this and can't do this, and that's
it's a conceit.
Yeah. Right. And it's like a metaphor, because like we were talking about this earlier, but like so you have these snarfs. I can't remember what they're called. I can't remember any of these.
The Tortuga or the monster or the monkeys. The scrunts or the demon grass dogs.
Yeah. But like you have these things, and yeah, we have the Tortuga that are supposed to be, they are three but named as one, and they're supposed to be these monkeys that uphold the law. So when the rules are broken, they're the ones that's supposed to come in and punish people, and they're not there for most of the movie. And that's when you realize that, oh wait, Paul Giamatti's character lost his entire family to a person who broke the rules, right? Like, the law of our world is that you don't break into people's house and murder people, right? Like that's the rule of existence in our society. Just like the rule of existence in this society is you don't attack the narf on her way home after she's fulfilled her obligation. That's the rule, and you broke the rule. And there's a point in the movie where Paul Giamatti's like, where are they? Why are they not upholding the rules? Why are they not punishing this thing for doing this? And I don't think the movie comes out right and says this, but you get the feeling that like no justice was dealt for what happened to his family. Nothing happened. Like, there was no justice. Nobody came and punished the people for breaking the rules. And even if they did, why didn't justice? Why didn't the law? Why didn't the monkeys, the hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil, justice monkeys, stop it from happening? Yeah.
I think that's great, and I never thought of that before. And then when you said that to me, and I watched the part, like you just said, he actually, Paul Giamatti's character actually says, "Where is the justice?" And I was like, yeah that's this is definitely in here. Like, that's definitely the through line for his character, is this frustration that justice is not being done, and furthermore that he thinks he's supposed to be the protector. He thinks that he should have protected his family, and he failed at his purpose of being the protector. So he's a failure at his own purpose. He's frustrated at the miscarriage of justice, and that, that the organs of the universe that are supposed to be keeping people safe and administering justice have failed. Everything has failed its purpose. And then by the end of the movie, he realizes, no, his role is to be the healer. His role is to be the caretaker, to take care of people. And I mean, he's literally the caretaker, right? Of the, he's the custodian.
Yeah, he's literally like the custodian. Yeah,
Yeah.
that is his job title and his purpose.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, he finds his way back again. I mean, like one of the things, speaking of M. Night Shyamalan and his philosophy, one of the things we're seeing again and again throughout these movies is this horrible traumatic event happens to these characters, and the otherworldly supernatural experiences that they go through bring them back to a place of happiness, growth, realization, purpose.
Yeah.
And that's something, just about every single one of these movies has had our characters go through. I mean, that's what Signs was about. Signs was a guy who lost his wife, finding his way back to his faith. This is a movie about a guy who lost his entire family, who lost his purpose, just realizing that he had the wrong one. He had the wrong purpose.
Yeah. Unbreakable is a guy trying to live a life contrary to what he knows in his heart is his purpose.
Yeah. I'm not sure how to line Sixth Sense up to that, but
I'm not sure how to line The Village up to that either, really. But it's definitely a theme that he's interested in. And I mean, it's not, doesn't have to be in all of his movies, but it's definitely a kind of storytelling. And I think it's a very powerful theme. Like there's a reason, there's a good reason why he keeps going back to it, because each of these movies, destroys me. Like I admit, like I get, these movies make me emotional. They work on me really well. And I mean, it's funny. Normally I don't mind admitting that a movie has affected me emotionally, but so many people are like derisive and dismissive of these movies that it makes me a little bit self-conscious. It's like, no, this is great. You're wrong. You're a wrong person. But I don't know. I almost can't imagine like the scene where he's kind of healing her, not working on,
oh my God. I mean, he's like crying out to his loved ones and I'm so sorry. I'm sorry I wasn't there. I'm sorry. I see your faces every day. I miss it. Like, how could you not just be absolutely devastated by that? And look, I think I look at this and I don't want to put like words in people's mouths, but you look at a movie like this and you look at what everyone thinks M. Night Shyamalan is as a filmmaker, and the perception of who he is and the movies he makes don't line up. Mm-hmm. And I think it's just a perpetual non-meeting expectations. You go into an M. Night Shyamalan movie, oh, it's going to be a spooky movie with twists. And that's just not really what he does. I mean, yes, there's been some scary parts in some of his movies. And yes, he does like to throw curveballs in his narrative. That's one of the things he enjoys in his writing. But they're character studies. They're really kind of intimate, small character studies. And that's really what he excels at. And I just feel like you walk into one of these movies and you don't know that. You don't know what you're getting. And you're going to be disappointed. Because, this is a weird movie. There's a lot of weird words in it. The pace is a little off. And let's be clear. I don't think this is a perfect movie. I do think the pace probably could be sped up a little bit. I think it takes a real while to spin up to what it's doing.
Yeah.
The way it navigates to get there is kind of funny. Like it's not a movie I think you can get comfortable in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. There are certain scenes that I kind of wonder if they could be trimmed or cut, and that information couldn't be conveyed in some better way. And there's also structurally, there's this one part of the movie, that I remember distinctly where it's like you are adrift as the viewer. You're like, I don't understand where this movie is going and like why, like a scene cuts before we really understand where we're going, and then we're just kind of like I'm lost. And
do you remember where that was?
Well, I'm pretty sure that it's after the eagle doesn't come the first time, and the scrunt shows up and he takes her back into his room, and then he's kind of, he doesn't know what's going to happen. Like he's confused. You're confused. And then the next scene is him going to repair the toilet in the couple's room. And you're like, okay, why? Like it's just a jarring kind of disjoint where you're like, okay, what is this? What's happening? Who is this woman who's telling him all the secrets? I'm not paying attention to this scene because I'm still in that moment where where the getting her back to, you know, her people thing was derailed, and
Yeah.
how does this connect to that? I mean,
that.
ultimately kind of minor, but it's like a structural zigzag where
Sure.
it you know, it could have been improved. I mean, ultimately very minor though. Like nothing like, I don't think there's anything like a plot hole in this movie. Actually, it's all just
No, I don't think there's plot. One of the things that I don't think works very well for me is the kind of the whole conceit that Story is not able to tell him anything about the story, about the legend, about any of the stuff going on. And it kind of like is just like an unnecessary complication in the movie. Like I understand why Shyamalan did it, because he wants to bring in that Asian family. Like the movie is very much about the community of people that comes together around Story, and how they come together and through each other find their own purpose here and find their own interpretation. And so Shyamalan wants the story to be relayed not by the person who lived it, but by someone else. That it really reinforces the telling of the fairy tale too. But it's just kind of awkward at times. Like I thought, while I really appreciated a lot of the camera work in the scene where they're like she's sitting in the shower and doing like code signs for yes or no, to kind of interpret the way through the story. I liked the camera work there. I just think the storytelling there is a little clunky, because it's like, so he's heard all this from the grandmother, and now he's just like checking it with her to make sure it's accurate. And it's just like, that's just a little clunky for me. A little one too many layers, I think.
Yeah, there's more than a few things that I would call clunky. You know, it's funny. I think you said to me that you love the intro sequence, the cartoon, and I thought that it went on maybe like 20% too long, where you're just like,
oh no, I didn't mean that. I meant the opening scene where he's like stabbing the bug with the broom.
Yeah.
No, I don't like the intro sequence at all, and part of me wonders if it even needs to be there.
I don't think it does really. It's a bit of flavoring. It's a bit of introducing you to what you're getting into, because really, this is one thing that keeps occurring to me in this conversation is like, I don't remember what my reaction was to this movie the first time I saw it.
Yeah, I have no idea. The only thing that really stuck in my head about this movie was the guy who only works out half of his body, because it's such a funny, weird idea that it just like stuck in my head.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure I've always liked the movie, but I definitely have come to have liked it more in each subsequent viewing, rather than like loving it instantly. Like I think that maybe the first viewing of The Sixth Sense on some level is the most powerful, because it hits you with this amazing reveal. But that's not the case with this movie. This movie, you once you understand what he's doing with the movie and where things are going and kind of what this movie is, then you rewatch it and you can really appreciate it more. But it's so, like, I think this is one of his problems. This is one of Shyamalan's problems, maybe, is that he doesn't really to say he defies genre is an understatement. He's just off to the side doing his own thing.
Yeah.
And we really do watch movies with an expectation based on what type of movie we think we're watching. And yeah, when it doesn't conform to that expectation in different ways, then we subconsciously or consciously view that as flaws. Once you've watched the movie, you get what it is, and then you can watch it again and you no longer necessarily see it that way. But I can actually see people walking away from this movie with a negative opinion the first time, and then revisiting it, realizing what it is, and maybe liking it more on subsequent viewings.
Yeah, I mean, that was definitely my experience. Like I said, I honestly don't think I've seen this movie since I saw it the first time.
Really?
And I did not remember loving it. I think I've probably seen like bits and pieces of it throughout the years, like if it's on HBO or something and I happen to sit down and, oh yeah, I'll watch some of this. But I don't think I had sat through the whole thing. And yeah, I mean, I was surprised at how well it worked on me. Yeah, like we talked about, there are clunky stuff. There's kind of clunky dialogue. Shyamalan dialogue is very otherworldly in general. Like we've talked about this throughout the whole thing. Nobody talks like Shyamalan characters talk, right? But nobody really talked like Shakespeare characters talked either. And I'm not comparing Shyamalan to William Shakespeare. I'm just saying that there is an artifact to how we develop how characters talk, right?
Right.
Like nobody talks like Joss Whedon characters talk either. That's an established thing he's doing to make to do something in his storytelling. And I think that's what Shyamalan's doing as well. Like I don't think he's writing like non-human sounding dialogue because he just has no idea how to write how people talk. I think it's intentional.
Yeah, I think it's mostly intentional. Let me, and this is one area where I'm like, I'm very much a Shyamalan apologist, as we've said before. I will always defend him. This is one area where I'm willing to be like, I think sometimes he crosses a line. Like it really helps that Haley Joel Osment's character is supposed to be this weird kid who spends a lot of time with ghosts who speak in an old-timey dialect, and thus he speaks weird. Mm-hmm. Bryce Dallas Howard in The Village is kind of like she just seems strange in her own way. Joaquin Phoenix's character is a weird guy. It makes sense he would talk weird. Everyone in that movie talks weird because they're doing the whole New England thing, and we talked about that last time, and that made a lot of sense, and that works with the story. Sure. Characters being weird in Signs makes less sense. Certain characters in this movie being weird makes less sense, and thus like Story being weird in this movie and talking like a weird alien. Yeah, she's a weird alien. That's fine. But Paul Giamatti really kind of just acts very naturalistically, and so I think even when he's saying weird things, it works. Some of the characters, some of the actors in this movie can't make the weird dialogue work.
Who are you referring to?
I'm referring to the woman who acts as the translator for her mother's story.
Yeah, that's a really interesting woman because I think this was her first role, her absolutely first role, and she's still working today. Not her first role, sorry. She was in a bunch of TV shows she was woman number 1 in Seinfeld. Okay. So she was not exactly like killing it. But Shyamalan was really excited about this woman. He really liked her, and he really wanted her in this movie. And I don't know, she's not bad. Like I think it's kind of a weird thing because it's like a very stereotypical like interpretation of an Asian woman and her mother, right? Like like accent wise and relationship wise, like it's very, very stereotypical. And yeah, I mean, it doesn't, I think she's fine. Like I said, I think maybe that's part of why I think that whole translation storytelling part is clunky and weird, is because it doesn't really work with her.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's really just a couple of line reads that derail it for me. Like the one where she's like, I want to believe it too, and you're just like, that you just sound like you're reading off of a piece of paper. I'm sorry, it's jarring.
Yeah. On the flip side of that, though, I think is Jeffrey Wright, who plays Mr. Dury, the crossword puzzle guy. And I love his dialogue.
Yeah.
I mean, first of all, Jeffrey Wright's just like this incredibly wonderful actor. Like he's so good. Yeah. He's good in everything he's ever been in. So like he just comes into this and he has a very certain kind of tick and cadence with which he talks, and it just slides really perfectly into this guy obsessed with words.
Right. And it helps with him because he always uses the most precise word. Like, he doesn't say the first word of this crossword puzzle that I figured out. He says the first word that I deciphered.
Yeah.
It's every sentence almost has not like a great big $4 word, but like a very exact word. And it just goes with his character really well.
Yeah.
So
totally agree.
I mean, I guess I'm not really criticizing Shyamalan. It's more like sometimes he writes a line where it ends up with an actor not knowing what to do with that line. Yeah. I think we're going to see that in The Happening.
I don't want to completely spoil our Happening conversation, but we are going to see that in The Happening. We're going to see it a whole bunch of times in The Happening, but I think that's on purpose. Like, and I don't mean it's on purpose that like Marky Mark is doing a really great job reading this line. I don't think Marky Mark is doing a great job reading this line. I do think Shyamalan cast Marky Mark to read that line in that really terrible way on purpose.
Yeah.
That's what I think. And I can't wait to have that conversation because I unapologetically love that stupid, ridiculous movie, and I can't wait to talk about it. But
Awesome.
yeah, I mean, I was very pleasantly surprised with how much this movie worked on me. I still, like I said, it's ambitious, and with ambition comes problems, right? Like you're trying to do something big and important and meaningful, and it makes it like I have Sixth Sense, for all its twists and turns and complications, was a pretty straightforward movie.
Yeah.
It was very tight. And this is not a tight movie. This is a unwieldy, weavy, complex thing. But when I look at it as a whole, when I look at the finished product, and when I look at what the movie's doing and what the movie was trying to say and what the movie's trying to get across to me, I can't help but appreciate every single bit that he's going for. Like, I'm never going to not like a movie whose central message is, look at how powerful stories can be.
Right.
Like, I'm just built to love that kind of stuff. So
Yeah. Right. And, I think that the reason we end up talking about a lot of writer directors on the show rather than just, I don't know if this is true or not, but I feel like most of our deconstructing shows have been focused on writer directors, not just directors.
I think that's accurate. Yeah.
And the reason is that, like, Shyamalan does have a very characteristic style of how he directs the camera, how he directs actors, the not just the performances, but even down to like the blocking and facing away from the camera, weird stuff like that. But it's really kind of what makes him this unique and I think, person worthy of study, is that he's integrating a very unique, strange mode of storytelling with this very unique, strange mode of film direction, and it creates this product that is really unlike anything else. And I've basically loved all the movies that we've talked about up to this point in the series. So
yeah, I have too, and I know I'm gonna love the next one as well, for different kinds of reasons. The one big elephant in the room, though, is the one that's coming up in 2 movies from now.
Yeah.
The only one of these movies I've never seen is The Last Airbender. And so I think that's probably going to be the most interesting conversation, because I am not expecting to like that movie, but finding out why is going to be really fascinating to me.
I agree. Yeah. I think for similar reasons, talking about After Earth could be interesting because he didn't write it. And that's kind of why I brought up this idea that he's been the writer-director. It's been his vision from start to finish for all these.
Yeah.
But that's one where he just got this science fiction script, and it's like, well, okay, how much of Shyamalan are we going to see in that movie? And well, I think I've seen it before. The answer is not very much, but
yeah, I think there's a little bit there, but yeah. I mean, it's really exciting. I've really enjoyed this. Like I've liked, this is my favorite thing we do. I've always thought that, and doing it for Shyamalan, I was so excited, and I'm so glad that, like, I was worried about this one. I didn't want to come in here, and I knew you liked it, and I didn't want to come in here and shit all over this movie you really liked. And so I was worried going into it, but I'm so happy. I shouldn't be surprised at this point. Like, even when I have problems with his storytelling, I appreciate his directorial style so much. I appreciate the voice he tells, the story he tells with his camera. Like, he's not a bad director. And that's one of the things that I think is going to be really fascinating when it gets to The Last Airbender, because from everything I understand and from the little bits and pieces and clips I've seen, that is a movie that stylistically looks like way, way different from everything that he's done in these movies. So I'm really curious about that, because, like, the one thing I've said is the various levels of enjoyment I've had for these movies have been related to how much I think the story works. It has never been any critique of his directing, because
right.
I think that's it's beautiful. You're right. It's different. It's weird. It's purposeful. He uses the frame. He uses angles in different interesting ways. The reflections, the importance he places on things off screen, not just the faces, but just like everyone's looking at a thing that's out of frame, and we all want to see it, but he's just like, no, I'm not gonna let you see that. And that's not important. Look at the characters. That's what's important. I love all of that. And yeah, so this, we're getting into the bad, quote unquote, bad movies, but I've never been more excited for this project.
Yeah, me too. I mean, my theory, I think I'll just say it now because that way it's on record and we can talk about later whether I'm wrong or not. But my theory, and I'm going to make an analogy, is that he's basically like a genius improvisational jazz, saxophonist. And he's been super, super successful being a improvisational jazz saxophonist. And then maybe he got a little bit too experimental in his last 2 CDs, and people were saying, okay, tone it down with the with the weird stuff that we don't know what to do with it. It kind of doesn't fit into the mold. And then somebody hands him huge piles of money and says, just make like a normal like rock album. And he's like, I don't want to make a rock album. I don't really do that. That's not my thing, and I don't have all of the sub skills that come together to do that. But I'm a good musician, so I'm going to try to do that as best I can. And turns out that it doesn't actually work that well to do that.
All right. Well, that's interesting. I can't wait to talk about that rock album.
Yeah.
Great. Cool. All right, so that is Lady in the Water. If you've watched this movie before and remember not liking it, give it another chance. Seriously, just take a couple hours and watch it again. And you might not like it as much as we did, but you might like it a little more. So do that.
I agree.
Doof. All right, Matt. Let's move into talking about some Spider-Mans. So we both saw the newest movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Spider-Man: Far From Home. I don't think we're going to spoil that movie, but you have to spoil Endgame to talk about this movie. Like you can't not. Like it's impossible to talk about this movie without spoiling Endgame. So there will be Endgame spoilers here. So if you haven't seen Endgame, really? Like literally everyone saw it.
Yeah.
Go see it.
And it's really good. It's really excellent. It's The MCU wrapped up its phase whatever really, really well.
Yeah. So, Matt, what did you think of Far From Home?
I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it a lot. I thought it was delightful. It wasn't trying to be epic and life-changing and incredible. It was trying to be a good superhero movie, a good Spider-Man movie, and it accomplished that. I think I agree with actually the typical take that it was it's pretty much better than any other Spider-Man movie other than the first 2 Tobey Maguire ones, which I still just love, and part of that is like irrational because I fell in love with them when I was a kid. Anyway, what's your take?
Yeah, I liked it a lot. I think you maybe liked it a little more than I did. I love Tom Holland as Spider-Man. I think he's funny, adorable. He's got the Peter Parker that he plays is this wonderful Peter Parker that I really, really enjoy. I am with you that the Raimi, Tobey Maguire versions will always be my Spider-Man. And it's just because those movies hit at a really key point in my life, and I just fell in love with both of those movies, and it's wrapped up in nostalgia. Although I will say that Spider-Man 2 is still, like, nostalgia or no, still a beautifully constructed movie.
It is.
But I like Tom Holland's Spider-Man a lot. I was a little bit colder on Homecoming. I think that some of the thematic stuff in Homecoming just didn't work for me. And I think we talked about this on a podcast before. I don't remember. But there's just some stuff about like the overall arc of Peter's character in that movie didn't really work on me as well. Mm-hmm. But I think it did here. I think that this is a Peter Parker that is reeling from, again, Avengers spoilers, the death of his father figure. Tony Stark has died, and the entire world doesn't know what to do without Tony Stark. The Avengers are kind of all gone. Did the Avengers exist anymore? We don't know. So everyone's just kind of waiting, and the people of New York City are looking to Spider-Man, and he's also looking to himself as this guy who has, to go back to the old adage, he has all this great responsibility, and a part of him doesn't want it, right? A part of him wants to be the kid still. Like at the end of Homecoming, he decided to be the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man still, and then Thanos came and he hopped on the suit and went to space, but he never really had time to say like, okay, I guess I'm done with the small time stuff. And this is a movie dealing with that, dealing with the loss of his mentor, his father, and wanting to be that kid, and it does it in a fun little, hey, let's do a Euro trip type thing,
right? And a lot of the stuff that works the best on me is not even the hero stuff; it's the perpetual will they won't they with him and MJ.
Yeah.
I honestly, this portrayal of MJ so completely different from the previous, the Tobey Maguire films, but
you couldn't think of her name.
I couldn't think of her name. I know her name. I know her name.
Do you?
For God's sake, it's in my brain somewhere.
Come on, you can do it.
No, the problem is that the wrong name came up, which
No, it's not MJ. Can I bail you out here? Or
Yeah,
you want to
yeah,
guess it?
bail me out.
It's Kirsten Dunst.
Kirsten Dunst. I knew that. I've always known that. I've never lost it for a second. But I love this. I love the new MJ. I love the younger and more awkward kind of portrayal. It just really resonated with me. Their interactions together. The whole him being a high school student story worked on me perfectly, and I just was like grinning and really appreciating like the kind of like comedy / drama of all of that. And then of course, all the superhero stuff and that plot I thought was really, really well executed. I mean, I've honestly come to expect that from the MCU at this point, which is kind of a shocking thing to say, because for the first while I was like, yeah, they're okay. And now I'm just like, no, I kind of expect MCU movies to be really good now, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I'm honestly going to say, with the exception of one scene that I can't really talk about in any kind of detail because it's big spoilers, I found the action mostly underwhelming. I think we can, without spoiling, say that Peter's fighting a bunch of elemental monsters a lot of the time, and I just found that kind of bland and uninteresting. I didn't like. It's fine. It's not bad. It's not like John Watts, the director, directed it fine, but it's just kind of the milquetoast MCU action to me that didn't really draw me in. And then of course there's the one exception to that, the big exception to that, which is this beautiful scene about halfway through the movie that's this wonderful weird action sequence that I just loved so much. But everything else I was just like, But I mean, that's it doesn't have to be my favorite part of the movie. My favorite part of the movie is not Spider-Man. My favorite part of the movie is Peter Parker and MJ. And Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio is like he's really good. Like he's really good. I love Jake Gyllenhaal, and he's doing this wonderful thing where he's like goofy and like fully into it. Like he's fully committing to this goofy kind of character, but also in a way where he's like paternal to Peter. Like Peter has lost Tony Stark, and he's looking for guidance. He's looking for someone to tell him what to do. And Jake Gyllenhaal kind of swoops in here and is this guy who immediately bonds with him and is warm to him and tries to help him and guide him in this very kind of paternal way. And Jake Gyllenhaal plays that part of the character very, very well, while also getting to do the kind of bombastic superhero type stuff very well as well. So I really liked this movie.
Yeah, I think I would actually say that there were elements of the action that I really liked seeing in the MCU, because in many of these movies it's like, will big powerful man smash thing or other man or men. And in this one there is more of an element of there's danger in a populated area, and he has to keep people safe and save people, usually while also juggling like something like, he's not wearing a mask, so he has to also deal with that. These aren't spoilers. These are more just like the idea of a lot of the tension comes more from anxiety surrounding his identity being revealed, rather than, is he going to smash man, which I think is good, actually.
Yeah, there's one whole sequence that, not any really specific spoilers, but a tower is trying to fall down. Is starting to fall down, and his entire motivation throughout that entire fight is just to keep the thing from falling down. Yeah. And that's kind of good small stakes Spider-Man stuff that I do like. It's when he's trying to punch a molten monster that I'm just less interested in that.
I agree.
Yeah. So Spider-Man Far From Home, pretty good. Happy. This is the last film in the Infinity Saga, Matt. This is this not Endgame, not the one with end in it. It's this one, and it's a nice little coda. Like I think it's like it. There are no spoilers, but there are things in here that lay some groundwork for where the MCU is going to go from here. In a very kind of vague way. Yeah. We don't get a lot of specific. It's not like the villain of stage phase 4. I don't even know what the phases are. It's not like the villain of the next phase is in this movie or anything, but just laying the tracks.
Yeah, definitely stay through the credits all the way.
Yeah, I would say the mid-credits sequence is one of the more important ones in the MCU so far.
Yeah, yeah.
Which I mean, leave it up to yourself whether you think that's a good thing to do or not, whether it's good to make a thing that technically takes place after the end of the movie be really key to the movie.
Yeah, I still can't fathom that people get up and start leaving the theater when the credits roll. And then I'm like, okay, most people are not. I mean, I guess I weirdly don't think of myself as like a Marvel super fan, but
Matt,
that's a bit.
You loved the End Game and Infinity War.
Yeah,
you don't get to love those movies and not be a Marvel super fan.
True.
I'm sorry.
That's true.
But yeah, I mean, I think I don't know if we really want to get into this, but I mean, do you think it's weird, like, that we're gonna start specifically telling our story within an end credit sequence? Because like that matters. It matters to what happens in this movie.
Yeah.
And I just think it's weird that it's technically not in the movie. The movie that, you know, you have from the beginning of the movie to the start of the credits to tell your story, and you've signaled to people that the movie's over now. And I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking this.
Tell me if I'm wrong, but aren't they doing like the movie ends, they start doing the like really, really stylized credits?
Yeah.
And then they do the mid-credit scene, and then they cut to like just the black and white credits.
Yeah, that's correct.
And I feel like usually the convention is that you're kind of expected to watch through the end of the highly stylized credits, and that's considered part of the movie. So in this case, I'm less worried than usual. But
yeah. And I suppose by movie number 19, they're like confident enough that people they get it now, right?
Yeah.
So
that's what I think. But like I said, people still left. I'd say more than half of the theater left before the end of the credits, and I was like,
It's madness.
Come on. And
Yeah.
this is an Alamo Draft House. You guys are supposed to like movies. Okay, whatever.
All right. Well, I think that's it, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's all we had for you guys this week. If you have any opinions on Spider-Man Far From Home, or more importantly, on M. Night Shyamalan's masterpiece, Lady in the Water, you can reach out to us via email at doofmedia@gmail.com or over on our Twitter account at doofmedia. You can also leave comments in the YouTube or on the website.
That's right. And if you're not already subscribed to this podcast, we encourage you to do so and ensure you never miss an episode. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, Google Play, and pretty much anywhere else podcasts can be found. And
you can find all the other shows we do over at our website, doofmedia.com. That's where you can see shows like Deep Impact, We've Got Ward, Devout of You. What else we got there? Is there anything else? There's a book club. There's a book club next week. We're doing, we talked about The Expanse a couple weeks ago, and now we're reading the first book in that a week from the 19th, a week from Friday, which is what day? The 26th of July. We're doing a live book club on Friday night. So check that out as well.
Yeah. If you attend the book club live stream, then we will interact with you in the chat and we can talk about the book, and it'll be awesome.
Yeah. And if you want to support us and get to like vote on the books we do in the book club and a bunch of other cool bonus content, you can become a patron of Doof Media. Head on over to our Patreon account. That's patreon.com/doofmedia and pledge $1 a month or whatever else you can afford. It helps pay for the cost of the website and the podcast and the equipment and the growth we're trying to do and a bunch of cool stuff we're trying to do. So every little bit helps, and we really appreciate everyone who supports us.
Yeah. Also, please consider rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts if you have a second. Every review helps us get more exposure and introduces new people to the content that we make here.
All right, guys, we will see you all next week when we are talking about the Netflix animated anthology series Love, Death, and Robots.
And you'll do what I say. My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say.